Imagine spending like 15 years building a multi-million-dollar business. You've completely dialed in the supply chain, you've built this fiercely loyal customer base, and your operations are pretty much fully optimized.
Right, everything is just humming along perfectly.
Exactly. And then one day, you look at the underlying software running your online storefront, and you realize something terrifying.
Oh yeah, the realization that you're sitting on a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. You realize the only way to save your business from a catastrophic security breach is to basically tear the entire site down to the studs. Like, you have to move it across the internet without losing a single sale in the process.
I mean, it is the ultimate digital high wire act. You are attempting to swap out the engine of an airplane while it's cruising at 30,000 feet. And you're just really hoping the passengers in the cabin don't even notice the turbulence.
It's wild. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a highly confidential 19-minute playbook from April 2026.
Yeah, and this document is just a massive, comprehensive end-to-end guide. It details exactly how these massive e-commerce stores migrate from Magento, or Adobe Commerce, over to Shopify.
And for you listening, we aren't just going to read down a feature list or a dry technical manual today. We are using this playbook as a lens to really examine the hidden, frankly staggering costs of running a digital business today.
Right, we're exploring the high-stakes reality of moving really complex digital infrastructure, because the source material here is incredibly revealing.
It really is. It breaks down the total cost of ownership. It outlines this very strict 8-phase migration playbook and exposes some major existential SEO risks.
Not to mention diving deep into the messy reality of transferring customer data. I mean, it completely pulls back the curtain on what it actually takes to orchestrate a platform move of this scale.
So to understand the migration, I think we first have to understand the fire that is actively pushing these merchants out the door.
Yeah, the burning platform, so to speak.
Exactly, because if we rewind a bit to the 2010s, Magento was the undisputed king of open source e-commerce. Everyone used it. So the obvious question is, why the mass exodus now?
Well, the playbook points directly to security.
Mm.
And it completely shatters this illusion that open source software is somehow, free.
Right, because that definition of free is the exact trap so many merchants fall into.
Yeah, exactly. Because Magento open source has a $0 license fee. You download the code base, you install it on your servers, and theoretically you owe nobody a dime for the software itself.
But the hidden operational costs required to keep that free software alive are just staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the critical turning point really happened on June 30, 2020. That was the official end-of-life date for Magento 1.
Meaning Adobe basically stopped issuing security patches. The vendor washed their hands of it and just said, hey, you are on your own.
Right. And running an unsupported e-commerce platform means immediate PCI noncompliance.
Wow. So you are legally and financially exposed the second you process a single credit card.
Exactly. But honestly, worse than the compliance issue is the target it paints on your back. The playbook specifically cites these MagCard-style card skimming campaigns that actively hunt for vulnerable stores.
I actually want to pause and explain how Magento works, because it's not a brute force hack where someone just sits there guessing a password.
No, not at all. It's a supply chain attack.
Right. Hackers find a vulnerability in a third-party Magento extension. Maybe it's just a simple shipping calculator or a reviews widget, and they inject this tiny, almost invisible JavaScript payload right into the code.
Yeah. And then when a customer goes to checkout and types in their credit card number, that JavaScript quietly harvests the keystrokes. It sends the data to a remote server before the transaction is even encrypted.
Which is terrifying because the merchant doesn't even know it's happening.
The checkout still works, the customer still gets their order, but that credit card data is just gone.
And we saw this scale up so aggressively, right? Like with the Cosmic Sting hack in 2024.
Yep. And then the Session Reaper vulnerabilities in 2025. Just those two campaigns alone compromised over 100,000 stores.
That's insane. And even if a merchant upgraded to Magento 2, which does receive security patches, the architectural burden is still there.
Oh, yeah. The merchant is solely responsible for manually applying those patches to their specific servers without breaking all their custom code.
And that manual labor is where the whole free illusion completely evaporates. Because, sure, you aren't paying a license fee, but your hosting alone is running anywhere from $300 to, over $2,000 a month?
Easily. Because Magento's architecture requires incredibly robust, dedicated server environments just to load pages at a decent speed.
And then you need the developers to actually keep it running.
Right, you need highly specialized senior PHP developers to maintain that infrastructure, untangle the inevitable extension conflicts, and actually apply those security patches.
Which is a huge problem because the broader tech industry has largely shifted away from monolithic PHP applications.
Exactly. The modern web is dominated by headless commerce, JavaScript frameworks like React, microservices. So the talent pool of engineers willing to work on legacy Magento monoliths is rapidly shrinking.
So you are paying a massive premium, around $120 to $200 an hour, just to keep the lights on.
Yep.
It's like running Magento right now is like owning a beautiful vintage car as your daily commuter. The sticker price was practically nothing. But you are spending vastly more time and money sourcing rare parts and paying highly specialized mechanics just to keep the engine from catching fire on the highway every morning.
That is a perfect analogy. And the alternative for these merchants has historically been, well, upgrading to Adobe Commerce, which is the paid enterprise tier.
But that introduces a massive license fee tied directly to your gross merchandise value, right?
Exactly. For a typical mid-market merchant, that license fee ranges from $22,000 to over $125,000 a year.
Wow. Contrast that architecture with Shopify's model. Shopify Advanced sits at about $4,700 a year, and Shopify Plus is roughly $27,600 a year.
And the math there isn't just about the subscription cost. It's about what the subscription actually absorbs. Shopify bundles the server hosting, the level 1 PCI compliance, and all the security patching into a closed ecosystem.
The merchant literally never touches a server.
Exactly. So when you eliminate those hidden operational costs, the financial argument changes drastically for pretty much any merchant doing under $50 million in GMV.
Now, the playbook does outline a few strict exceptions where staying on the Magento architecture makes strategic sense, doesn't it?
It does. Say a merchant pulling in over $50 million in GMV with deeply integrated legacy ERP systems, they might find the switching costs are just too high.
Or maybe a business relying on highly bespoke B2B catalog rules.
Right, where different corporate buyers see completely different pricing matrices and inventory allocations based on complex contracts. That's hard to move.
And naturally, if a company already employs a dedicated in-house team of 5 or more Magento engineers, the operational cost is already sunk.
Yeah, but for the vast majority of mid-market retail, the platform is basically burning.
So if the math is that clear, and the security risks are that dire, the logical next step is just pack up and leave immediately. But the playbook makes it very clear that migrating an enterprise store isn't just a matter of hitting a copy-paste button.
Oh, not even close. When you start packing up your digital belongings, you quickly realize the new house has completely different dimensions.
Right. So let's talk about the data transfer, because this is where the friction really starts.
Yeah, we have to divide the data into what moves seamlessly and what requires total reconstruction. Migration applications tools like Lit Extension or Migration Pro are highly effective at securely moving the static foundational data.
So they map the database tables and successfully poured over the product catalogs, the high-res images, category structures, all that.
Exactly. And the standard customer profiles containing names and addresses. That all moves fine.
Right, the static data moves, but the logic doesn't.
Nope. Any custom Magento modules, that bespoke PHP code a merchant spent thousands of dollars developing over the years to handle, say, a unique shipping rule or a custom loyalty program that hits a brick wall.
Because that PHP code cannot run on Shopify's servers.
Exactly. It has to be entirely rebuilt from scratch using Shopify's native apps or hard-coded in Liquid, which is Shopify's proprietary templating language.
And the treatment of historical data shifts, too. Your past orders do migrate, but they're imported into Shopify as strictly read-only records.
Yeah, and let's unpack the mechanism behind that, because it sounds arbitrary, but it's actually about database integrity.
Right, because Shopify's architecture is built around a live state machine. When an active order exists, it triggers a cascade of events.
Yeah, it decrements live inventory, it fires off accounting webhooks, it signals the fulfillment center.
So if you were to force import 5 years of old Magento orders as live executable data, you would trigger massive phantom fulfillments.
You'd completely wreck the current inventory counts. So they must be flagged as historical reference data. You can view them for customer service, but you cannot process a new refund against a 3-year-old Magento order through the Shopify dashboard.
Okay, But the most disruptive limitation in the data transfer process, the one that shocks almost every merchant, is that customer passwords absolutely cannot be migrated.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
I was reading this section of the playbook, and I swear I had to read it twice. You are telling me that a merchant who has spent a decade building a loyal customer base has to email every single one of their thousands of users and force them to reset their password just to log in and buy again.
That's exactly right.
But that sounds like a catastrophic conversion killer and a customer service nightmare. Why is this unavoidable?
Well, to understand why, we really have to look at how secure databases actually store passwords. Because when you create an account on Magento, the database does not save your password in plain text.
Right, of course.
It uses cryptographic hashing algorithms, specifically things like bcrypt or SHA-256. And it combines those with what are called platform-specific salts.
Salts.
You think of a salt like a highly classified secret spice blend added to a recipe. Even if Shopify understands the base ingredients, the hash password, they do not possess Magento's secret spice ratio.
Right. Because if Shopify servers could easily decipher and import the encrypted passwords from a completely different architecture, it would mean the encryption itself was fundamentally weak in the first place.
Exactly. The friction proves the locks are actually working. This structural incompatibility is a strict security feature.
Wow. So what's the workaround?
The only operational solution is a perfectly timed bulk account invite flow. The exact moment the new Shopify site goes live, the merchant triggers an automated email campaign to the entire customer base.
And that contains a securely generated one-click set your new password link.
Right. And it requires a ton of proactive communication so the customer expects the email and doesn't just assume it's a phishing scam.
I mean, losing a percentage of your active users to password reset fatigue is painful, but I guess it's a manageable, localized headache.
Yeah, it's a temporary dip.
Losing your ability to be found on Google, however, is a catastrophic extinction event. And that brings us to what the playbook identifies as the absolute highest priority risk in the entire migration process.
Yes, SEO and the terrifying reality of the .html trap.
A successful data migration means absolutely nothing if the organic traffic just vanishes.
Right. Once the products and customers are loaded into the new system, the critical challenge shifts to ensuring the internet actually still knows where you are.
It's like failing to map your URLs during a digital migration is like moving your incredibly successful physical retail store to the other side of the city in the middle of the night, but refusing to leave a forwarding address or a sign in the old window.
That's exactly it.
You had a line out the door on Monday, and on Tuesday, thousands of people are just staring at an empty lot wondering if you went bankrupt.
And the digital equivalent of that empty lot is the 404 error. And it happens because Magento and Shopify use fundamentally incompatible routing architectures.
Right. Magento organizes its pages using a deep nested URL structure.
Yeah, a product link often reflects the exact category path, so it might look like electronics phone suffin 15.html.
But Shopify enforces a completely flat, non-negotiable URL structure. Every product lives at products followed by the handle. So the new link is simply products if phone 15.
So when a merchant just flips the DNS switch without a redirect map, every single index Magento URL that Google has spent years ranking instantly returns a 404 page not found error.
And let's explain what that does to Google's crawlers, because Google allocates a specific crawl budget to your domain. If their bots hit your site and suddenly encounter 5,000 dead ends, the algorithm assumes the site is broken or abandoned.
Yeah, they just de-index those pages.
Your domain authority collapses, your organic traffic zeroes out, and even if you fix the links later, it takes 3 to 6 months for Google to slowly trust the domain again and restore your rankings.
It's brutal. And preventing that collapse requires highly mechanical, meticulous mapping. You cannot automate it away with a simple plugin.
No. An SEO team literally has to crawl the old live site using specialized software like Screaming Frog or Sitebulb to extract every single URL Google has ever indexed.
And then they construct this massive spreadsheet, mapping every legacy link to its exact corresponding destination on the new Shopify store. And then they bulk upload those rules as 301 permanent redirects.
Now, the playbook highlights a very specific landmine here called the .html trap.
Oh, this catches so many people.
Because by default, Magento is configured to append .html to the end of product and category URLs.
Right. But Shopify's routing engine never uses that extension.
So if a merchant maps electronics phone 15 to the new product page, but forgets to map the version ending in .html, the link still breaks.
Exactly. And if you have 5,000 products, you have 5,000 .html links floating around on external blogs, in old marketing emails, and in search indexes. It is the single most common missed redirect in e-commerce migrations.
Wow. So a 301 redirect is not just an IT checklist item, it's the mechanism that transfers the accumulated brand equity of a web address.
Yeah. If it's executed flawlessly, organic traffic dips slightly for a few days and recovers in a matter of weeks. If you skip it, you are functionally launching a brand new business from scratch in the eyes of the search engines.
Okay, so the data is successfully ported, the passwords are reset, and the Google traffic is successfully diverted to the new address. The customer lands on the page, they add the item to their cart, and they proceed to check out.
And this is where we hit the most sensitive layer of the entire playbook, the money pipeline.
Because bringing traffic to the store means absolutely nothing if the financial trust doesn't transfer, especially for merchants relying on recurring subscriptions.
The payment infrastructure introduces both financial and operational hurdles. The first decision a merchant faces is whether to keep their existing third-party payment gateway like Stripe, Braintree, or Authorize.net, or switch entirely to the native Shopify payments gateway.
And the playbook details a clear financial penalty for keeping your old gateway, doesn't it?
It does. If a merchant stays on a third-party processor, Shopify levies an additional transaction fee on top of the gateway's standard processing rate.
Right, that penalty is 2% on the basic plan, and it scales down to about 0.15% on the plus plan.
But if the merchant switches to Shopify payments, that extra penalty fee is waived entirely.
So, I mean, it seems like an obvious financial choice to switch.
Well, yes and no, because a new gateway treats you like a new merchant. Your established chargeback history and risk profile do not carry over.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the merchant will likely face 30 to 60 days of stricter underwriting, rolling reserves, or delayed payouts while the new processor assesses their fraud risk.
But the significantly larger threat, the one that can truly destroy a subscription business overnight, is what the playbook refers to as the vaulted card hostage situation.
This is a fascinating mechanism.
Yeah.
To understand the hostage situation, we have to look at tokenization.
Right. When a customer checks the Save My Credit Card for Later box or signs up for a monthly subscription, the e-commerce platform does not save the actual 16-digit credit card number.
No, that would be a massive security violation.
Instead, the payment gateway securely vaults the card on their own servers and hands the e-commerce platform a random string of characters called a token.
Yeah, and think of a token like a casino poker chip. It holds immense value inside the Bellagio, but if you walk across the street and try to hand that chip to a dealer at the MGM Grand, it's just a meaningless piece of plastic.
Right. A token generated by Stripe is complete cryptographic gibberish to Braintree.
Exactly. And for a merchant running subscription billing apps like Recharge or Bold, which also have to be entirely rebuilt on the Shopify side, those specific gateway tokens are the lifeblood of the business.
Because the subscriptions rely on those tokens to automatically trigger the monthly billing cycle.
Right. And because the tokens are gateway specific, you can't just export them in a CSV file and upload them to the new site.
So if you ignore the problem and you just force your existing subscriber base to manually log into the new site and type their credit card numbers all over again.
The friction causes a massive 15 to 40% spike in churn.
Wow.
Yeah, the subscribers don't bother re-entering their data. They just let the subscription lapse.
So how do you rescue the hostages? How do you move the vaulted cards from one gateway to another without the customer ever noticing?
It requires initiating a formal PCI-compliant card data migration directly between the two competing payment gateways.
So the merchant's team never actually touches the raw data.
Never. They have to facilitate a legal and technical handshake. Signing NDAs, establishing secure PGP encryption keys so the old gateway can securely transmit the raw credit card numbers to the new gateway.
Which then generates brand new tokens for the Shopify store to use.
Exactly. And this bureaucratic and technical process requires a 2 to 6 week lead time.
Wait, I want to highlight the implication of that lead time. If moving the credit card data takes up to 6 weeks of coordination between external financial institutions, that means the IT team isn't setting the launch date.
Right.
The finance team and the payment gateways are dictating the timeline for the entire IT migration.
Yes, exactly. For any subscription-heavy merchant, the gateway migration must be scoped and initiated in week 1 of the project. If the card data transfer is delayed, the site launch is delayed.
Because launching without the vaulted cards intact destroys the recurring revenue stream on day one.
Absolutely.
So with the database limitations, the SEO landmines, and this complex financial choreography all mapped out, what is the actual timeline to execute a migration of this scale?
Well, the playbook outlines an 8-phase process with realistic timelines stretching anywhere from 4 to 24 weeks.
Okay, so quite a range.
Yeah, I mean, a simple do-it-yourself migration for a small catalog under 500 SKUs, utilizing an off-the-shelf Shopify theme that might take a month and cost less than $5,000.
But an agency-led migration for a complex mid-market merchant managing thousands of SKUs, rebuilding bespoke PHP modules into Liquid, and transferring payment tokens, what does that look like?
That will demand between 100 and 500 hours of agency labor. At typical rates of $90 to $250 an hour, the project cost lands between $15,000 and over $150,000.
The execution really requires military precision. Phase 1 is the audit and freeze, where the merchant legally commits to halting all new feature development on the Magento site to prevent moving a moving target.
Right, but the tension really peaks in Phase 7, user acceptance testing and the parallel run. This is where both the legacy Magento site and the staging Shopify site are functioning simultaneously.
And the major risk here is inventory synchronization.
Oh, overselling is a massive threat during a parallel run, because if a tester or a beta customer purchases the last medium shirt on the Shopify staging site, the live Magento environment is completely blind to that transaction.
The live site still shows one in stock, a real customer buys it, and now you have sold inventory that no longer exists, triggering a massive customer service crisis.
Exactly. So to mitigate this, the architecture demands either implementing a real-time API sync between both databases, which is very complex and expensive, or executing a hard freeze on the Magento checkout mechanism exactly 24 hours before the final cutover, funneling all new transactions through the new system.
Which brings us to the climax of the playbook. Phase 8, the DNS cutover. This reads like the final countdown of a rocket launch.
It really does. You don't just flip a switch. You orchestrate the internet's phone book.
Right. The domain name system, or DNS, is what translates your brand's readable website name into the numerical IP address of your servers. And internet service providers cache those addresses to save bandwidth.
So if you want to move your site to Shopify's servers, you have to lower the DNS time to live, the TTL setting, to 300 seconds. You do this a full 48 hours before launch.
Which basically forces every server on the global internet to stop caching your old Magento IP address for 24 hours and instead check for new address every 5 minutes.
Exactly. So when you finally update the record during your slowest commercial hour, say a Tuesday at 2 a.m., the traffic diverts to Shopify globally in minutes, rather than fracturing your audience across 2 sites for days.
But the most critical component of Phase 8 is the rollback plan.
Yes. The playbook insists on a strict 3-step abort sequence. First, the legacy Magento environment must remain fully operational on a hidden temporary subdomain for at least 30 days.
Just in case.
Second, if a critical unresolvable failure occurs within the first 24 hours of the Shopify launch, such as a complete failure of the payment gateway, the team must revert the DNS back to Magento immediately. You never attempt to rebuild structural architecture on the fly while actively bleeding sales.
Right. You roll back the DNS, document the critical failure, fix it in the staging environment, and attempt the launch again the following week. Because 2 delayed cutovers are frustrating for the engineering team. Permanent damage to revenue and brand trust is fatal.
And the golden rule of e-commerce migrations.
Yeah.
Never execute a cutover during peak seasonality or within 6 weeks of Black Friday.
Right. The entire ecosystem is just too fragile during peak traffic events to introduce architectural volatility. Let's actually take a breath and recap the sheer scale of what we've unpacked today.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We started with the massive push factors forcing merchants to abandon legacy platforms, the terrifying reality of Magcart supply chain attacks, and the staggering hidden operational costs required to maintain so-called free open source software.
Then we navigated the friction of the data transfer, exploring why password hashes and salts make forced resets a necessary security feature.
We mapped out the mechanics of the .html trap and why a failure to orchestrate 301 redirects will literally erase a brand from Google's index.
And finally, we looked at the complex tokenization of payment gateways and why moving vaulted credit cards requires weeks of financial bureaucracy just to keep subscription revenue alive.
So for you listening, whether you operate an e-commerce store or manage enterprise software in a completely different industry, the broader principles here are vital. Any major architectural shift forces an organization to confront the difference between explicit costs, like a monthly software license, and the insidious hidden costs of developer scarcity, server maintenance, and compliance liability.
It fundamentally redefined how you value your digital assets. It forces the realization that your invisible infrastructure, the accumulated authority of your Google search rankings, the cryptographic integrity of your password salts, and the gateway-specific payment tokens generating your recurring revenue are often vastly more valuable than the physical inventory sitting in your warehouse.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to ponder. When you step back and look at the sheer friction involved in this playbook, you realize how much of a modern business's lifeblood is tied up in data formats that are deliberately engineered to be difficult to extract. If a massive migration reveals that a huge portion of your company's value is locked up in non-transferable architecture like proprietary hashes and localized payment tokens, who truly owns your customer relationships? Is it you, the business owner, who acquired the customer? Or is it the software platforms hosting the data? Something to think about the next time you assume the digital foundation beneath your business is yours to control forever.